Overpark for 8 years. He has also held administrative roles at Marine College in Illinois, Austin Community College in Austin, Texas, Genesee College in New York, I hope I pronounced these right, West Virginia College, and Wenatchee Valley College, if anybody's from Wenatchee Valley College, and he's currently at Overpark. And Phil's passion is learning. So, Phil.
I think America is very segmented. I think the social scientists would say that that's the case. We're segmented by income, by class, by educational level, by ideology, maybe more and more as we go along. We're also segmented within our institutions. We have our student affairs side of the house, we have the academic affairs side of the house, we have the classified staff, we have the exempt staff, we have the administrators, all these things that separate us. So for me, the holy grail of education has always been to get people together, to get them across the boundaries that normally separate them. Because often it's not a matter of ill will or malice or anything that keeps us apart. It's habit and comfort.
Sure.
One of the reasons that I had you all shake hands at the beginning of the hour today and sit somewhere else, which is what I do with my students, is that I found at conferences like this, I tend to sit somewhere that I feel comfortable and just vegetate there. So without, the social scientists talk about choice architecture. Have any of you heard of choice architecture? Okay, well you could probably tell us more about it, but isn't it sort of the idea that you don't compel people to do things, but you provide a certain guided, constrained
atmosphere for them to flourish.
Okay. Okay. Well, so that's what I'm trying to do as a faculty member. I teach communication almost exclusively public speaking. I did start out many long years ago as an ESL instructor. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Korea. Saw a couple of different kinds of educational approaches there, including the way they do research. And then I worked at Washington State University as a residence hall director at a small private college, Oberlin College in Ohio, as a residence hall director. I was director of educational programming at WSU for all the residence halls and the fraternities and the sororities. Then I became a college administrator, was first assistant to the president in Illinois at a huge college in the Chicagoland area. Then I became an associate dean, then I became a dean, then I was a vice president, a position comparable to what Dr. Walstrum was talking about, vice president for academic affairs and student development. And now I have the love of my life, which is being a faculty member, because all those experiences that I've had keep rattling around in the back of my head. When I start moving toward staid, traditional kinds of things, I remember, no, I wouldn't have done that when I was at WSU, so I wouldn't have been permitted to do that. Or I remember what Patty Peterson did in 1983 in that residence hall and that program. So it reminds me that there are so many potential directions for us to go that involve getting people mixed up. I'm sure you can tell how wonderful our institution is with people like these who are collaborating on something like this. I'll talk about some of the things that gratify me and that I've tried to do as well to achieve some of these same things. So, here's a handout also. Call it.
Here, we can help you.
Oh, thank you. Student involvement in and out. So I think one of my obligations as an instructor is to get people simply to meet new people. In a public speaking class, that's inherent in the discipline, I suppose, but of course people who come to a public speaking class are often reticent about that. They're fearful about that. So part of my role is, I believe, is to get them more comfortable by challenging them. So the first thing you see on there is the guests in portion here. Faculty perspective. All right, students and guests in. Since May of 2007, we've kept a guest book in our classroom. I did an analysis a couple of days ago with the help of a work study student. 416 people have come through since that time, which averages to 14 students per month coming into the classroom. Now, when I say students, they're not all students. Usually they're actually family members or friends Occasionally we'll have somebody just wander in. We had 2 days ago, the Toastmasters were meeting in our class yesterday. Today's Thursday. Yesterday, they were holding a Toastmasters meeting in our class in my absence. But one guy walked in a day early, wearing an Army uniform, and said, "Is this where the Toastmasters meeting is?" I said, "No, but you're welcome to sit in." So what kind of class is this? Public speaking. So he participated in the class. And that, when people come to our classroom, we always applaud them, including our own students when they come late. We always applaud people when they walk in late. Okay, so here are some people with their family members. Oops, that zoom. Okay. At the end of, I'll get to that in a minute, but it's a pleasure for me personally to have people come in new with fresh perspectives, just physically to be in the classroom. It changes the dynamic, it makes it, and we've had people from other parts of campus, other classes, our ABEG EDSL students, sometimes we invite them to come and sit in the back of the room. I don't always tell the students, so if they're giving a speech, they think they're going to be talking to a regular select group of friends that they've gotten comfortable with. Instead, they've got 24 people in the back of the room. I think that kind of thing is wholesome for them. So we have, I mentioned the occasional guests, and then also the required guests. One of the speeches that the students do is a paired speech. Comes later on in the quarter. I insist for that one that each of the speakers in the pair invite one person. Could be anyone, could be somebody they know or not. But again, the idea there is partly to introduce those people to what we're doing, because occasionally people will find out that something's going on at the college that they weren't aware of that might attract them to become involved in the college. But also it gives our students an expanded audience to become familiar with, because as we all know, when you get into the working world, impromptu situations come up all the time when you don't expect to have somebody there who walks in. So I want them to get ready for that. Then we have I should mention the OCESE. This is the B under 1 there. The optional culminating educational social event. I would like to pay tribute here to Danielle, because she was one of the major leaders in our class. In addition to going to Olympia, she always set an example for vitality and positiveness, and you were involved in OCESE. Well, at the end of the quarter on the last day, an alternative name for this would be a potluck. But it is not just a potluck, however, because for the last 3 quarters we've been able to hold it in our beautiful student center, the McGavick Student Center, thanks to Claire and David Stickland, who schedules that building. We have a room practically as big as the room we were eating lunch in here today to hold this event. So students can bring their family members, their friends. We used to be able to bring pets, but the college, speaking of Policies and Procedures Committee, someone on the Policies and Procedures Committee passed a rule a few years ago, no more pets. But it's meant to be a festive occasion. We find out who's going to bring what food. We have a giant line. A student last quarter and the quarter before volunteered to be our MC. That had never happened before. He's a magician and a hypnotist. So he came with his tuxedo, stood up with the wireless microphone and led us through the process. Everyone who came was expected to read a poem with the wireless microphone. And here we've got a group of maybe 100 people, most of whom the individuals don't know, and yet the students are able to do that. They get some points too, but it's still, I think, a tribute to their growth. And also, last time we had so many children that we had to have an open area for the kids to run around and play on the floor. We got photographs of that too. Students out. State board meetings in Olympia. We're fortunate, yes.
But before you move from this OCESE.
Yes.
So your students in your class did some kind of speaking something.
Yes.
For all the people that came. Is that correct?
Yes.
I was trying to figure out how that's done.
Okay, well, it's a potluck event. The first thing that happens is everybody comes in and sits at tables like this and gets to know each other. Well, the students sign. We have some traditions. We have a big jug that every student signs. And we have a paper with anime pictures on it, about 50 anime pictures of all different expressions. So they have to sign a picture that represents how they felt at the beginning of the quarter and how they feel at the end of the quarter. Then we set up all of the food. Then the MC does his first magic trick. Then people start going through the line for food. Then he calls them up onto the stage by slips of paper that they hand in at the beginning. They each read a poem or recite a poem in turn at their own speed. And it's about a 2-hour event. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Have you found that activities like this kind of show students in general that a speech class is not as scary as they initially thought it was?
They should have learned, they've learned it by then, certainly. And I think the visitors will see that, yes. Yeah, it's really pretty remarkable. If I told the students on the first day that you're going to be reading a poem to a group of 100 people at the end of the quarter, they would run away.
Right.
So yes, I think it does serve, yes. Yeah.
And this might be a marginal question, but does it hinder your objectivity at all to be an instructor and yet to have such open, close, intimate relationship, not only with your students but with their families as well?
Well, that's a good question. I'd like to say no. I'd like to say I use a rubric and a very simple method of grading for the course.
Okay.
So sometimes students will ask me, well, what's my grade? And all I have to say is, how many points do you have so far? How many points do you plan on getting? So, and I also tell them at the beginning of the quarter, I don't believe in grading. I would not use grades if it were not required. So I try to take the emphasis off the whole grading part of it. But assessment is part of everything that happens, of course. A lot of it is informal and individual.
Sure.
So that's a very good question. I've lost some students, perhaps I should say this,